What's up, everyone? Darkscream217 here. With me is DecKrash.
Better known as Brandon.
And today we're going to do the first of like a few different Robotech discussion videos because I've been in this crazy Robotech slash Macross kick for a while. And as you've seen from my previous videos, I've been in the habit of doing so. But I just want to talk about the original series itself. Now, the version I watch, I just want to clarify with DecKrash here. The version I watch is actually the remastered version, the one that pees on the nostalgia of some of the fanboys, the ones that they changed the sound effects to most of the sound effects of the series.
Now I must have never seen the remastered version, or what I have is the Protoculture edition. Though I'm not entirely sure if that one's the remastered. It has like all the series and the extras that came with all the DVDs. So I guess I have to go back and see.
The version
So
I have is the 20 disc collection that came out in 2013. It has all three of the series, the Sentinels pilot, what they could have for the movie, all the Southern Cross stuff, basically, the make its own stuff, um, the Shadow Chronicles, Love Live Alive, and almost all the bonus features that came with previous DVD releases, including commercials, scenes they removed from the original Japanese source material, etc., etc.
Oh yeah, mine has all that except for maybe the release of the Shadow Chronicles and Love Live Alive, because that one actually came out before, and it's called the Protoculture edition. It's in a big blue box.
Now, the reason why I picked up this 20 disc collection is because I saw it at a store for like $30. I was like, yeah, that's actually a pretty sweet deal for all that content. Sold. Then I've heard from some people that Robotech was considered a classic for its time, but if you talk to someone in my demographic or anyone else after me, they know very little about it. Some people just think Robotech was just an adaptation of just the first Macross series. They didn't know that there were two other shows put together alongside with it, Southern Cross and Genesis Climber Mospeada.
Yeah, a lot of people just think that Robotech is just one contiguous series, but you just gotta look up the information. As a matter of fact, a lot of the series back in the '80s did that. The Voltron being one of them. It was two different series that was put together. One was Goleon, King of Beasts, and it was Dairugger 15.
Yeah. Um, but Robotech, and the reason why they would do this is to meet an episode count. Now, the person who's responsible for editing these three shows together is the late Carl Masek. And he took three unrelated but very similar sci-fi shows and tried to string them all together into one continuous plot. And yeah, there are a lot of similarities. They all have transforming mecha. They all have the side characters of each of the shows actually fall in love with an alien love interest. Another weird thing is all three of those alien love interests have green hair.
Maybe that was just a thing back then. With anime, there's always a sort of significance with the hair
Nah, man, they
color.
should step it up to Shatner levels and go for green skin.
Probably so. But with anime, of course, there's always been like a significance with hair color, and maybe. Well, I'm trying to think. I think that is not the first time I'd ever seen an anime where the alien girl has green hair. So it might be something to that. One of those like tropes that anime uses a lot.
Um, and all three shows were produced by Tatsunoko. Even though Tatsunoko doesn't really own Macross and Southern Cross, I think it just belongs to Big West that has the major rights. But that's another video for another day. I have never seen Robotech prior to 2013, so I'm basically seeing it with adult eyes. And
As,
you grew
as
up with it.
Yes, I remember watching it on TV when I was young, back in like '84, '85. One of the scenes that stood out the most was the one where Max Sterling had to sneak around the Zentradi ship disguised as a Zentradi warrior with one of those cloaks around his Veritech. It's kind of funny looking.
Yeah, that's a scene that sticks with me too. That was pretty hilarious. And practical as may be, it's still pretty. It was still pretty funny and also awesome at the same time. But then again, he is supposed to be an ace pilot. That's probably one of the skills he comes with, dressing up your mech. Uh, but seeing it like as an adult, in the 21st century, The show does have signs of aging, but as an anime, for an edited series, it's actually still well done to this day. Shit, I wish I grew up with something like this when I was a kid, but nope, I got Pokemon.
Yeah, like I said, this was a very common thing when I was younger, taking an anime series and just completely re-editing it. And maybe there was just something about, the way they did it back in the 80s that, people will often give it a pass, compared to what was done in the 90s with things like 4Kids Entertainment and other companies that completely gutted the original anime. Maybe it was simply that when it came to the show, and when they re-edited it and everything, they made it into something completely different that was uniquely American. Whereas with 4Kids Entertainment, they were trying to cut out all the violence and all the and all the content that might be objectionable, and changing things in a way that they were trying to say it was still the anime, and uh, and yet presenting people with something that was completely butchered. Uh, and I know you were saying this wasn't for kids, but like with what was done with Cardcaptor Sakura, where they tried to shift the focus from Sakura to Lee, and also and then also rearrange the order of the shows, and
Oh
it
yeah,
was out. I mean, yeah, that was pretty bad.
yeah. When I was a kid who watched Card Captors, now yeah, as a kid I liked Card Captors. But man, I was confused when the episode premiere was actually made it look like it started out several episodes later, which it did. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the first episode, but she's got like 8 cards already. What the?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they completely changed the first episode. That really that upset a lot of people. But with Robotech, you still do have that faction of people who think that Harmony Gold butchered a really pure anime series and think that Carl Masick is the living symbol of the devil to this day.
No, I disagree far from it because at least he was able to keep most of the story intact. He made some big changes, like what protoculture was, but characters still died. Um, I don't know if they showed this in the remastered versions, but man, in the Macross saga especially, there were just dead people were just getting crowds were just getting killed. Buildings collapsed under them, explosions all over the place. There was one scene where a pissed off Zentradi took his assault rifle, banged it to a glass room of a building, and just started shooting everyone inside the building. You actually saw them get shot.
Oh
That was that
wow,
was
yeah,
that was the post that was during the post Zentradi War arc where they tried to coexist with humans and they got fucking frustrated because of it.
oh right, yeah. Because I'm reminded also of some scenes like during the space battles with the Zentradi. I think I recall seeing one where this huge explosion happened, and all you saw was like the Zentradi's skin getting blown off or something like that. It was might have been something that missed the editor's eyes or something like that because so much was happening at that moment.
Yeah. Even though they did do some mild edits and some of them were noticeable, like when Rick Hunter first saw an actual Zentradi. Roy shoots him in the back, but they actually cut out the part where he gets shot. You just hear it just cuts to Rick, hears a bunch of gun noises, and cuts back to him dead body with holes.
Yeah, I was about to say, wasn't that the scene where like where Roy dies?
No, no, no. This was like at the end of episode 2.
Oh, okay. Because I thought I thought you were talking about the scene where Roy dies, and I thought that they edited out something about him being full of holes in his back.
No, they did not. I don't think they edited that out. But they probably edited out the parts where he got shot. But no, they clearly pretty much explained that he got blood loss from being riddled in the back.
Jeez. Well, I did like, but really, in all honesty, this is probably what made the story, the Robotech, so appealing. This was, we got to remember, this was the '80s. The '80s had a tendency. First of all, there's cartoons for a long time were episodic in nature. You didn't necessarily have to. They didn't usually tell a full story. Robotech was one of the first that told a full story that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Also, the characters changed as the story progressed. Rick became more mature. Characters grew up, had children, died. So it didn't insult the audience. It treated the audience as if we understood these things and applied best. So this was one of the appeals of
Uh,
Robotech. That it's a much more mature form of storytelling than what was normally released at that time.
Hold on, I gotta hold you. I gotta hold you on that part about the whole. Oh, it didn't treat the audience like children. One of the biggest complaints I have about Robotech in general, and maybe some people have this similar complaint, is the narrator did that. He did a whole lot of tell, not show, and it would be okay if the narrator just narrated the beginning of the episode and then the end of the episode. But no, he sprinkles his narration in between, giving away things that people could have figured out on their own. He even gives away character names and descriptions of who they are before we even get a full introduction to that character. Like I remember this one scene from the Master Saga where after Bowie met that mysterious green haired girl that played with this laser harp, and he's like, "Man, will I ever get to see this girl?" And then the narrator comes in and is like, "This girl is Musica. She's one of the blah blah blah." I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I think
The
what was
narrator himself, the actor himself, is actually pretty good. And he's got a really nice voice. It's just that, man, it's the script, really.
well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that the show didn't have problems. Yeah, there was a bit. It was a bit over expository, especially with the announcer thing. Now, also you have to remember that this was something that was commonly done in cartoons in the '80s, even then. And I'm trying to think if there's anything that comes out now that's like that. Not normally, unless they're being ironic about it. But the voiceover, yeah, okay, I can understand what you're saying. Yeah, they did. That is, if you can interpret it as sort of audience insulting, because we should be able to see what's going on, be able to interpret it. But also remember, there were some things that weren't exactly mentioned in the action, and they were taking a story that had already been written and everything like that, and having to just re-edit it and present it for American audiences. And Japanese storytelling techniques oftentimes don't involve putting things into the story that in context to the story, because how many anime have you seen that you actually had to go back and look through maybe a description of the show to understand what's going on, where you see it happening in the storyline, you're kind of blindsided by, okay, what just happened now. Japanese stories do tend to do a lot of visual storytelling, but it's where the details aren't always that important. And I think that's just something they were trying to cover up, with a good voiceover, so that people could at least understand better what just happened. And at least that's just how I interpret it.
Well, maybe if you were a younger audience member, that would make a whole lot of sense. But like I said, I'm seeing it with adult eyes. I'm just screaming "Thank you, Captain Obvious" at the TV a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put yourself in the position of let me see, how old was I when
Well,
Robotech came out?
that's why you're here. So because you're the one who's more nostalgic over this than I am.
Yeah, I was like 7 or 8 when Robotech came out. So you got to put yourself in the eyes of an 8-year-old, 7, 8-year-old kid. That actually is kind of helpful for them.
Um, I guess we could go. I guess we could go story by story. The Macross saga. The Macross saga is really good, and most people consider it to be the best of the series. But that's only probably because it gave birth to another franchise in Japan. Um, but man, I actually did not like Rick Hunter all that much.
Rick Hunter starts off a little. He thinks he knows everything, and he actually mellows out as the story progresses. So
I
yeah,
don't
he
know. I
starts.
don't think he did mellow out that much. I remember in the latter half of the episodes, he started to become more of an asshole towards Lisa. I mean, fuck, he chewed her out in front of her coworkers, stood her up on a date, and Yeah, for like 8 hours or longer than that, if I'm not mistaken. And
You know, characters did have flaws. You know, think of Min-May. Min-May was
the
just
thing
a
is, it's supposed to be a love story, and it's like, well, nothing says true love like treating the one you love like shit. That's pretty much the message I got out of that.
I think that if that episode, if I'm remembering right, that he had Min May had kind of come back into his life, and he still had a lot of feelings for her, regardless of how inconsistent she was. So yeah, I think that's just showing that Rick was not perfect, and that he could be easily wooed by a girl, but in the end, he realized whose heart whose heart truly belonged to.
Yeah, but that wasn't until like the last 5 minutes of the final episode of the Macross saga when shit gets blown up.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Like I said, you have a right to feel that way about Rick. I can understand why somebody would be, would think that Rick is just a jerk. So,
Yeah. Well, the thing that saves it for me is that I do like all the other characters. I like Lisa. I like Roy. I like Max and Miria. A little bit of Ben Dixon. I even like the two Zentradi antagonists that they introduced in the beginning of the series, Brita and Exodor, because right off the bat, you knew these characters weren't black and white villains. Um,
right, just the Zentradi. That was the whole thing about the Zentradi, is that they were just puppets.
yeah, to the Robotech masters. Um,
Yeah.
one of the big changes from Macross. Uh, But I also like Chiron because you already knew he was going to be a douche. I mean, why would you hire a guy named Chiron the Backstabber to do anything?
Ironically, that's a handle that I went by for a very long time on the internet.
You went by Brandon the Backstabber?
No,
Oh,
Chiron.
okay. Yeah,
I just like the name.
it is a pretty good. It is a pretty good name. It's easy to memorize. Um, the action scenes were really great. Now, sometimes the animation wasn't always that good, but when it was good, it was astounding. Um, like I said, a lot of space battles, a lot of shit blowing up, uh, wonderful detail. But like I said, there were some weird animation hiccups. Like this was only seen in the previews for the upcoming episodes of Robotech, but the preview to the episode Wedding Bells, they didn't show this footage in the following episode, but there was actually a scene with Miria having derp eyes. And speaking of Miria, in the next episode, her face looked different. Like they got rid of her lipstick detail, and the artwork was just weird. It was the episode when they had that knife duel. Miria was trying to kill Max in the middle of the night, and Max is like, "I love you. Let's get married."
Yeah, that was a bit sudden, and even looking back on that, well, okay, just so everybody knows, there was actually a series of novels made out of the Robotech story called they're just basically called the Jack McKinney novels, because that's the pseudonym of the authors that wrote these books. And in that scene, they tried their hardest to make this into they to go for a slow burn when it came to the romantic aspect, and that one was a bit, they timed it a little bit better, but only a little bit, because when I looked at that scene in the Robotech series, and so just how fast that happened, I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
it really was kind of
yeah, they
crazy.
had like a crazy knife fight. Miria wasn't able to beat him because Max was all like, "Bitch, I'm Leonardo," and after beating her in the knife fight, it's like, "Why don't you marry me instead?" Next scene, Max is like, "Hey," Max talks to Rick at the cafeteria. "Hey, I'm getting married," and Rick's like, "Are you crazy? Don't you think it's a little too early?" And then Max is like, "Oh, well, I haven't even told you the best part. She's actually a Zentradi female." It's like, "Are you fucking crazy?" And then the minute Rick sees Miria, he's like, "Go get married." He actually
Oh,
pulls a 180 on his opinion just because he thought Miria was hot.
well, like in the Jack McKinney novels, they also kind of portrayed Max as a bit of a hippie. So that I think might have made it a little bit more understandable. But then again, the Jack McKinney novels aren't canon in the series. Oh, but
I
by the
hope
way,
not because I never saw Max as a hippie.
well, by the way, what I wanted to say is that when you talked about how the animation was sometimes inconsistent and whatnot, this was of course the '80s, and Robotech or Macross as it was done was a series that came out in the early to mid '80s in Japan, and this was a time of course where Japan was still using techniques to where they were kind of animating on a budget, a very tight budget.
Hmm.
So they some things might have been rushed. They didn't use as many frames per second. They used a lot of real, almost Hanna Barbera esque techniques in some of their stuff, and sometimes production would be rushed to the point where you would find some inconsistencies in how the characters were designed. One frame, you'd see that, like you said, they had Miria had sort of a lipstick effect going, and then other times you see it without the lipstick effect because a lot of this stuff was cell animated, hand painted. So for yeah, and you're right, for a series that was done back in the '80s where such shortcuts were very commonplace, it still holds out amazingly well and is very beautifully animated in many parts. Especially like some of the space battle scenes and whatnot. They had that one scene where they blew up a Zentradi battleship, and it was all kind of in slow mo,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like amazingly detailed animation. Um, Whereas you did have some parts that were very much rushed, or just looked like some of the frames were not completed at the time of release. So yeah,
I also want to talk a little bit about the Zentradi. They were an interesting race because all they knew was basically they were a race of warriors. So seeing things like males and females coexisting with one another, kissing and music, that all just basically freaked them the fuck out. It was hilarious.
yeah, and I did a video on this on my channel about Robotech because I was talking about how Robotech was coming out with the movie soon,
Uh huh.
and and I mentioned in the Jack McKinney novels, it's really kind of funny because each chapter they begin with sort of a quote of some sort. And they had I forget the third guy in the trio, Max and Rick and the big guy, the one who died later,
Ben Dixon.
Ben Dixon, thanks. And it was sort of like a news report about Ben Dixon reporting about what it was like to have been captured by the Zentradi. And they said, well, it's amazing, they all Rick and Lisa did was kiss, and these big bad hombres just started to freak out. And then we later learned they were listening in on all our TV and radio broadcasts. Man, all we needed to do was just show a porno. The war would have been over immediately.
I would love to see that in the form of how it should have ended.
Oh my god, maybe I should write to them about that.
Ah,
So that would be obscure, I think, for now. Oh
I
well.
also like I forgot their name. I know one of them's named Rico, but the three Zentradi spies. Oh,
Rico Brown and Conda.
yeah, those guys. Oh, those they were interesting comic relief because they didn't know anything and they were trying to like understand what clothing and stuff was. It's like these sweater vests. It must be some sort of battle armor or something.
Oh god, yeah, when they went out wearing dresses,
Yeah.
the difference between male and female clothing. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I mean, the Zentradi were, like I said, they were just a puppet race, and it was pretty interesting to see how them, how they had to adjust to human culture and whatnot.
One other thing I actually didn't like. I did not like Minmay all that much.
Nobody likes Min May, so don't feel alone.
I do like her Macross counterpart from DYRL. Um, it, and I actually saw some footage, but they eventually did make a redub of Macross with the ADV cast, and they for some I don't know how this happened, but Matt Greenfield got Mari Iijima to voice her Japanese voice actress to do the English dub as well. And I still prefer that one, even though it's clearly broken English. But
They had a Japanese girl actually, the original Japanese voice actress for Min May to do the English voice for Min May in the ADV release of Macross.
yep, not kidding. Matt Greenfield even shared a story about that in Louisiana last year.
Oh my
I
god.
know. That's why I want to see Macross in the ADV dub. A lot of Macross purists and maybe some Robotech fanboys would snuff at the English dub, but then again, I'm a fan of ADV. Not there's only like two dubs I know I didn't like from them, and that's about it. Every other dub I'm seem content with.
Yeah, ADV had a really good cast when it came to doing dubs. So this, yeah, their dubs are actually kind of known to be pretty
Yeah.
decent. So
Um, However, it's probably impossible to find those copies, and if you do, it probably costs you an arm and leg and a testicle.
you're talking about the Macross series
The
now.
Macross DVDs. I heard Robotech re-released the series again, except it comes with the original shows. But I don't think they have the Macross English dub with it. If it does, let me know. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll probably pick that up.
You know, I had that's one of the other ones I was telling you about, Collateral. But I have the entire Macross original unrobotechized Macross series, but I'd never really watched it, so I had to go and had to go and check that out.
Yeah, but Meme's voice actress is the same voice actress as Mahoshi's second voice in the Tenchi series. I immediately recognized it, and I went, "Oh God." I like
Well,
Mahoshi's voice.
I like Hoshi, so I don't have a problem
Well,
with.
I like Mahoshi before she became completely useless.
Well, that's Tenchi Universe, and that's a totally
No,
different animal.
no. In the third Tenchi series of the OVAs, they brought her down to her universe counterpart. So
Mm,
they totally
and
fucked up the characters in the later series. But let's not talk about that. Otherwise,
yeah,
I'll be here for hours.
yeah, that's a different story for a different time.
But yeah, I just really did not like Mime all that much. Nor do I like her music. I mean, I didn't expect the music to be phenomenal, but I actually prefer Yellow Dancer's music over Mime's music.
Oh well, yeah, of course. The person who they had do Yellow Dancer's singing voice was actually a really good singer. When it came to, however, doing Min May's songs, I think like only one song by her I really like. The others I think just with me because I watched the series and they used part of that music kind of as background music whenever they were doing something involving Min-May, and especially as her rise to a singing idol. Um, they overdid it, and so it just got really annoying really fast. Whereas with Yellow Dancer in the third story arc, they didn't do it all that much. Plus, I have the Robotech soundtrack, and yeah, I actually like Lonely Soldier Boy. So.
Hmm. I don't have anything else to say about the Macross saga, other than the fact that all the mechs were pretty cool, except for the Zentradi battle pods. I'm not a big fan of Chicken Walker inspired mechs like the ATSTs and stuff. Never found them to be that practical in design. Like you could
Well,
trip them and then they'll be having a hard time getting up.
Well, depends on if they have like a gyroscopic balance, all that kind of
Uh,
stuff. But yeah, now we're just kind of getting into
but I do
now we're
I do like the other Zentradi power armor, the one that looks like they have something on their backs that look pretty big and bulgy.
yeah, that's actually that was the female armor.
Yeah, I like those designs. And there was another Zentradi armor that I think it was male based, but it also looked like power armor compared to the female designs.
My favorite mechs were just the ones well, they weren't Veritex, they weren't transformable. It was that was just basically a walking tank, had
I
those.
think they were called the Destroids.
No. I'm not talking about no. The Destroids are actually the walk. No, the Destroids are battle pods. You're right. I mean, no. I mean, the battle pods are not Destroids. But I'm trying to. Oh, you're talking about just the RDF forces,
Yeah.
the one that's like a big walking tank. Even the arms were cannons, and they had a huge cannon on their back. You know.
I think I know what you're talking about. Is that the one with the five cannons on its back?
Yeah, I mean, it was just these long turrets, and then they also had cannons for arms, and it was just kind of, it was really slow, but it just had the firepower to level half a city block, you know.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what those are called, but I know what you're talking about now. Macross Frontier also had that mech. It was piloted by that one woman whose name I'm forgetting right now.
Oh, yeah, and with the SDF one, they had that maneuver they had where they actually had one of the arms just burst into the
Yes.
body chip, and it opened all the ports, and it was nothing but those tank their attacks, and it just fired off and just blew the whole ship to hell.
I also liked how the SDF one they only used it in one scene, but they had like little mini force field barriers that you can actually control, and it looks like some sort of gelatinous. It looks like one of those rollerball controllers for those golfing arcade games, but they look more gelatinous.
It was the something multi-point shield system or something where they had the bridge bunnies were using the
Yeah,
track ball. to use to deflect the shots from the from the Zentradi. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. And later on in the story, they changed it to where they actually could do a shield that covered the entire SDF-1, but it like drained all their power or
Not
something
to
like that.
mention it malfunctioned and they used it at the wrong place because it leveled the city and it cost Ben Dixon his life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They were using that. They were over Denver when that happened.
Yeah, but wait a
They
minute.
were trying to get rid of the. They were trying to get rid of the people of
No,
Macross
I don't think they
City.
were over Denver. I think they were over Toronto.
It was Denver or Toronto, one of the two.
Denver was a city that was buried in ice in New Generation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, whatever city it was, I know that was
Well,
a scene
whatever
where
it was, it's a fucking impact crater.
yeah, they were trying to get back to they had gotten back to Earth and were trying to unload the civilians, and no one on Earth would take them. They had all written them off as dead, and they were even actually angry that they came back because they brought the Zentradi with them.
Dicks. I never. That's something that always gets me about space operas and other military esque stories is when the supposed good guys or the higher ups, um, they get a report from the main characters about what's going on and stuff, and instead of doing the logical thing, they do the very opposite. Just like in Mass Effect. That's why, even though I was playing mostly Paragon in that game, I said, "Fuck it, let the council die."
Yeah, well, that's a totally different animal though.
But yeah, the Macross Saga, it's probably my favorite out of the three shows. Now let's move on to the Robotech Masters, my least favorite. I didn't
Well, yeah,
I didn't really
and
hate it all that much, but I did question it a lot. This is the one that they had to change the most. Like I heard in Southern Cross, it doesn't even take place on Earth. It takes place on another planet that humans colonized. That
yeah, it's called Gloria, or I couldn't pronounce it really well, but yeah, if you're talking about the Super Dimensional Cavalry Southern Cross series.
yeah, and it had two moons, and they actually had to not use those shots, except in the version I have, they left one of them in there. Oops. Um, and it's funny that the Robotech Defense Force only has three female people in their squads. There's
Oh
Dana
yeah,
Sterling, there's Marie Crystal, and Nova Satori. And the only three female characters too. Um, every other person in the force is a dude that just gets red shirt.
well yeah, but you also have to remember that this was and even I actually watched a little bit of the unrobotechized Southern Cross. That it was a very personal story. So you're not so the rest of the cast aside from excuse me, Dana and her friends are they don't aren't really heavily focused on.
Hmm.
So
But that's not one of my big complaints about it. I just I really didn't like the mech designs in that series, except for the ones that were used in the space battles, the ones that look like helicopters. I forgot what they were called. And of course, like characters kept making idiotic decisions, which basically led to the ending, which sets up for a better story, the Invid Saga, aka New Generation.
now the whole deal, and if memory serves, because it's been a while since I read them. In the Jack McKinney novels, they even kind of focused a lot on just how idiotic the leadership of the Southern Cross the armies of the Southern Cross were. That they were overly confident. They were more just a bunch of guys who relied on their overabundance of testosterone than really any kind of rational thought, and it just ended up just causing just nothing but ruin for them even though they managed to defeat the Robotech Masters. The Invid came and the Southern Cross Army pretty much wiped out all their resources. The Invid came and just crushed what was left of Earth's defense.
Yeah, it sounds like Supreme Commander Leonard in a nutshell. He was such a douche. Um, he even he even sent some men over into a moon base because according to one of the other side characters in that series, he's just sending people who criticize or oppose him off somewhere else to a possible suicide mission. That includes one of the other characters, General Rolf Emerson, who is the most logical of the high command, and he suggested, hey, maybe if we try communicating with the Robotech masters, which is actually not a bad idea since we did it with the Zentradi. But then he's like, no, fuck that. We gotta blow them up. Brr.
Yeah, and that was like, and really, I think that with the Southern Cross story arc, I think the problem with it was that it needed to be a lot shorter. They expanded this a little too much, and I mean,
Funny thing
I
is, the original Southern Cross was actually canceled. They had to bum rush that ending.
really,
Yeah, I heard from various sources that the original series, Super Dimensional Cavalry Southern Cross, which was actually part of something called the Super Dimensional Trilogy that Macross is also that's part of. The third show, Orgus, which has nothing to do with Robotech, was also part of it. Which
yeah, I remember that. Right, there was that connection between the three, and yeah, Orgus was supposed to be the third one. Y-
no, I
y-
think Orgus was the second show, and Southern Cross was the third one. But like bad ratings caused it to be canceled prematurely. It was supposed to go for 30 something episodes. It only
Kind
had
of
23.
kind of sad because I've watched some of the original Orgus, and it was actually really good, if you ask
I
me.
haven't seen Orgus, but I heard Discotheque is playing a DVD release, and I'm gonna pick it up once they get it. Once they get it out.
Yeah, I really would love to see it because when it was released in the states, it they never released all of it,
Ah,
or it was or if all of it was released, it didn't stay in the market for very long at all. I mean, I picked up the first and second volume of Orgus from a bargain bin at a local video store, and I tried to find the rest of it, but all of it was out of print.
damn. But yeah, Southern Cross was actually prematurely canceled. Only had 23 episodes. Um, so the problem was it wasn't too long, and if that's considered long, then holy shit. Um,
Well, no, what I'm meaning is that when it comes to Robotech, the Southern Cross story arc could have been much shorter. That it was like they were trying to use everything they had involving footage and everything like that from the Southern Cross saga. Maybe they were contractually obligated to do it. I don't know, but it just wasn't as interesting. The characters weren't all that interesting. What happened outside of the very beginning and the very end really was inconsequential, except showing how the Earth forces were getting their backsides handed to them constantly. So
Not to,
it,
yeah, the characters really weren't that interesting, which is sad because this is the one with a female protagonist in it, Dana Sterling, who, by the way, you could kind of see the stitches between the shows together with adult eyes because Dana Sterling was introduced in the Macross Saga as an Ifrit with green hair. Here, she's a blonde with completely different hairstyle and everything. Now you could probably chalk it up to maybe she dyed it blonde or something because she hates her Zentradi half or something or whatever.
no, well, in the Jack McKinney novels, it just said that as she got older, it turned blonde.
Okay. And another character, Bowie Grant, which I believe is Claudia's nephew. I think I can't remember. Uh,
Yeah, it is.
he's also the foster son of General Emerson, and you also had Sean. Can't remember the big guy's name, and Louis Nichols, who would eventually show up in the Shadow Chronicles movie.
Yeah, he had actually a big part to play, even in the later parts of like the Jack McKinney novels that attempted to wrap up the Robotech story.
I kind
It was
of,
like,
I kind of liked Louis. I also like. Well, I'm not a big fan of the mecha designs, but I'm actually a big fan of the armor designs that they had.
oh,
Everyone had like these.
the armor was pretty cool looking.
Yeah, the armor was pretty cool. I also like Nova Satori's design for a police officer. She looked like a predecessor to Kiyone from Tenchi Muyo to me.
Maybe somebody did design her off of them. That'd be pretty cool.
And as for the Robotech Masters, they were confusing as fuck for me to understand. Okay, so they're these human-sized dudes that created a race of giants who knew nothing of culture or music, but these guys have music, and they have like the muses,
Oh,
Musica and her two sisters.
oh, okay. No, no, no. The okay. The Robotech Masters created the Zentradi. They denied the Zentradi anything that resembled culture. the Robotech masters had music and all that kind of stuff, but the Zentradi were specifically made, designed, built to be fighters. They needed to know nothing else, so they kept them sequestered from anything else the Robotech masters had, and only followed their masters' orders.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the Robotech masters had music and everything like that. Um, although by the time you see them come to Earth, they because of what they did and using protoculture and everything like that. Yes, I am kind of borrowing kind of some of the fluff from the Jack McKinney novels. They had altered their society into something of a rigid order that required the muses um, to the music somehow affected the bioroids or something like that. I can't remember the whole
Not
detail.
to mention they weren't allowed to have emotion either. That's considered a defect with them.
Right. That's the whole issue. They were trying to make themselves into machines in a
I
sense.
also didn't like how they. I didn't like the speech modifiers they used for some of the characters because they sounded way too high pitched, especially Zor Prime before he became before he joined the Southern Cross. Uh,
I think they were trying to make him as one of the other Bioroids because yeah, the Bioroids had that weird
yeah,
high multi-tone voice. First, I thought you were maybe talking about that echoing thing, which did kind of sound weird coming from the Robotech Masters. It sounded much more interesting coming from the Zentradi because they were so huge,
yeah,
but the Robotech Masters just sounded stupid.
yeah. Um, some of the action scenes were nice though, but
Yeah,
and the
that
villains weren't. And you know, again, communication could have saved him because the Robotech Master's objective was to obtain protoculture from Earth from whatever was left from the SDF-1 because of the upcoming Invid threat.
yeah, they were basically running from the Invid.
Yeah.
And because they knew that once again, kind of borrowing from the Jack McKinney fluff, but they knew the Invid were headed for Tyrol. They abandoned Tyrol because their Robotech because their protoculture reserves were running dry, and they detected protoculture on Earth, and so that was the reason why they came to Earth. And yeah, you're right. Communication with the Robotech masters would have saved them a lot of heartache.
Yeah. And and of course Zor's, heroic sacrifice basically doomed them all to hell.
Yeah, spreading the spores on.
Yeah. I'm like, good job, buddy.
Yeah, but at least that does do a good segue into the
Yeah,
third
it
series.
does. Which is actually my favorite. Well, my second favorite, New Generation. Definitely like the cast of characters in this one more. I don't know. That's because I was just not interested in the previous generation's cast, but I definitely like Scott Bernard a lot. A soldier who's going through some PTSD issues because his fiance died while as they were heading to Earth.
Right after he asked her to marry
Uh
him.
huh.
Yeah, that was pretty sad.
It was. Um, And boy, I think they upped the PTSD on this series too, because or in Robotech in comparison to Mospita, because later in the series they introduce another character who uh, is a is an invid in human form, and of course everyone didn't know that, so they thought she was just a girl missing or an amnesiac, and they were like, we gotta name her something. We can't just call her this woman or whatever. And instantly Scott's like, let's name her Marlene. And I'm like, gee, you okay, buddy? Which I heard in Mospita, that's not, she doesn't get a name like that at all. She's always referred to as Aisha, uh, even when her um, even when her Invid identity was out. But what?
Like once again, this is just result of the whole re-editing and everything
Yeah.
like that for the series.
Another thing that brings out the stitches of this series is one of the later episodes that go to New York, and New York is kind of in shambles, but the Statue of Liberty is still up there. Even though in the Macross saga, the Zentradi wipe out 80 to 90% of the Earth. Everything was a desert afterwards. How did New York survive?
Well, if once again I got to borrow from
Jack
Jack.
McKinney fluff, bring it up.
The because of the help of like the Zentradi technology and everything like that, they were able to do a massive amount of repair on a lot of on a lot of the cities and everything like that, in a very short period of time. So New York will maybe, well, New York probably might have been spared a lot. I don't know, but they managed to rebuild a lot of the cities after the Zentradi attack.
Another thing I like about New Generation is the Cyclone mechs. Those things are fucking awesome.
Oh yeah, the motorcycle, and so yeah,
The
that's probably
motorcycle that transforms into power armor, yes, I love that.
well, yeah. I think when it comes to like how the Robotech saga goes, the Macross saga is the best known one. It was the longest story arc, and the new generation is also very well known because of the mech designs, because of how the Invid mechs looked, and also how and also how the Cyclone designs were. Motorcycle, the transforming into battle armor. That was pretty
Not
cool.
to mention, Maspida also had a jet fighter that had three forms, just like the Valkyries in Macross. Like they had a Battleoid form, which is basically just robot form. Think Transformer, a jet form, and a form in between, which is usually called the Guardian mode, which is
Yeah, well, in the Japanese version, they were called Gerwalks.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's because they got different. Maybe they got similar people to work on it or something, or it's just the strangest, bizarre set of coincidences. But I could see why Masick would choose that to be part of the Robotech universe.
But also in the new generation, you had what was called the Alpha and Beta fighter, which it was like sort of
Yeah,
a
that's what I
rock.
mean. That they would call it Alpha.
Both of them were disconnect and had all three modes, so it was like two transformable fighters in one.
Yeah, the Alpha Fighter became a Veritech. So the Beta
Right.
Fighter, yeah, that was pretty cool. Um, what are the characters we could talk about? What's your favorite in the group?
Mine probably. It's like I said, it's been a while since I remember everything that was going on. All those characters were really well done, and this one at least had very good characterization because you had Scott, who was your soldier guy, and then it was a blonde haired girl, can't remember her
Rook
name right.
Bartley.
Yeah, Rook, who also
She was
she was malleable. She was sort of like his right hand girl, and then you had Rand, who was of course Mr. Maverick, and then you had Lunk, who was the mechanic, and then Annie, who was just sort of the wild card of the bunch, and then of course Lancer, who also was a soldier.
and he
So
was also a cross-dressing stage singer who wanted to be just like Lin Min May.
yeah, well, I mean, even in the Macross saga, Minmay is thought of, with a lot of
Yeah,
with a lot of reverence. So, but let me see. I mean, really, I don't know if I had a personal favorite out of it. The synergy of the group was one of the focal points of the storyline.
yeah. My two would have to be Rook and Lancer. Rook her cyclone was all red, which looked really nice, and she was also an ex biker gang member. There was one episode that did delve more into her backstory, and there was Lancer slash Yellow Dancer. He's a badass for a crossdresser, that's for sure. And he also has like a unique looking cyclone, which is all blue. The thing is, I thought Scott and Ray and cyclones were too similar in color, except the difference is, I think I think Scott's had like red sleeves in his power armor, and Rand had blue sleeves. That's it. That's basically it, and that could lead to some serious consistency in color errors too. So that's probably why you shouldn't stay too close to similar color designs.
Mm.
Um, which justifies why everyone in the real Ghostbusters looks so different. But anyways, yeah,
Yeah, well, that was more like just sort of a cartoonized version of the way that the characters originally looked, anyway. So,
that and Lancer's voiced by Cam Clark, and I like that voice actor a lot. Actually, the dubbing, some of it's dated, but most of it's still pretty good. I mean, if you've been a fan of anime as long as we have, you will recognize some voice actors like Tony Oliver and Richard Epcar. And
in in Robotech, when it comes to the English voice acting, for the time that it was made, across the board, it's very good.
yeah,
You know, because I mean, once again, you're dealing with an animated show that was mostly aimed at kids, And for a show that was aimed at kids, the dialogue was very mature, you know. So and also, like I said, very well toned. You didn't have people sounding like they were just phoning it in. All of them were doing their very best. I
Yeah,
I
I'm,
hear.
I'm I'm still here. I was just thinking on some things, in regards to the dub. The one big problem I have, it's very similar to the narrator thing, because if it's not the narrator that's doing expository information, it's the characters who thinking out loud that does it. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have their inner monologue thoughts, and the one that annoyed me the most was with Lunk after the episode with the where they go to that one village in Mexico. Um,
yeah.
to find this scientist who got murdered. At the end of the episode, he's like, "I will carry this notebook and use it as a memory of." And I'm like, man, again, that could help. That could work with the whole show don't tell thing.
Yeah, I mean, once again, yeah, the dialogue and things like that are not without their problems, but you can tell that the voice actors were giving it all they got, all they had. Even some parts that maybe even they might have thought was just overly expository and kind of silly.
Mm.
Yet they played it straight, you know.
Um, as for the Invid, kind of mix about those characters. They're no Zentradi, that's for sure.
Yeah, the Invid were much more different than the Zentradi, even the Robotech Masters. You know, both those two races had a more clear cut desire, and with the Invid, it was a bit more mysterious.
Yeah, like I heard that motivations were they were trying to go through Earth's evolutionary cycles to find the perfect form in order to save their own lives or something like that. And I love when Rand came to that realization after that weird dream sequence episode. He goes and tells Scott all this. It's like they're trying to save their own race by looking through the evolutionary cycles, and Scott's like, "Well, whoop de fucking do. I'm still gonna kill them."
Well, I mean, yeah, I think Scott was a
Yeah.
soldier. His orders were to destroy the Invid. So, you know, regardless of what the Invid were trying to do, they had a chokehold on Earth and the human
But
race.
I
And
I also wasn't a big fan of their designs. They look like oversized crustaceans for the most part, and they didn't have individual Invid X characters up until the end when they introduced Sarah. God, who's the Korg? Yeah,
yeah, that's what it
Korg
was.
and Ariel. But other than that, all the orders was given by the Invid Regis, and it kind of killed it just killed what any interest I had in the Invid right there, because I just prefer if they were more of a military outfit like the Zentradi or the Robotech Masters were. They just seem to all be controlled by the Regis at one point. Which, by the way, for an alien race like that, they sure getting their ass kicked pretty easily by fucking skirmishes from the freedom fighters.
Well,
They also had those human sized mechs that were patrolling some of the streets, but I never seen them in like an action in one action sequence ever.
what I was trying to say is that the Invid were actually something like a slug. They showed it actually in the series, and of course going back to the Jack McKinney fluff. If you saw the episode where they had that factory where they were making more Invid warriors,
Yeah.
we saw that thing that was inside that pod, and that's exactly what that thing with sort of that elongated weird head with the two little feelers at the end. That's what the Invid looked like, and they were putting them, inside inside the battle armor. And then when you go to Robotech 2, the Sentinels, you see the Invid Regent. That is the true form of the Invid.
Hmm. I need to actually watch that Sentinels pilot. Um,
You're not really going to get much out of it. I'll just say it right there. It kind of ends with a oh,
yeah,
but then
I figured because it was only a pilot. It was only a pilot.
Right, right.
Yeah, it never the series never came to fruition due to the financial issues and companies backing out. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if I have anything else to say. Like I said, I like the Yellow Dancers music more than Minmay's. Even though it may not be good music at all, but I'm just a fan of '80s music, so like I'll take that over anything that's made today.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of '80s music, but that doesn't exactly it doesn't eclipse my love of current music if it actually sounds good. There's just to me the '80s, of course, was just a time where music just had a big, huge flourish and boom because of new technologies and everything like that coming in. But yeah, the significance, of course, fortunately for Robotech, it still kept a lot of the plot. Let me see a lot of these significances of music and such that Macross had, because of course you look at the actual Macross series, you see just the significance that music plays, and even in Robotech it had a big significance. They were trying to do that for all three of the story arcs, even though they kind of shoehorned it in the Southern Cross one.
Yeah, yeah, they did.
But with Macross and with Southern Cross, definitely saw it really heavily.
Um, I don't know if I have anything else to say. But yeah, overall, Robotech, like I said, it's shown its age. The series is almost 30 years old at this point, but I've seen it just recently, and I liked it a lot. Most people probably hate it because it's an edited anime, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt because this was like my friend's childhood right here, and it was I also had some other friends who grew up with this series too, so I wanted to see what they liked about it so much, and I can understand why they enjoyed it so much. Um,
It's a series that, in spite of its age, still holds up fairly well.
hmm um, I could recommend this series, but that's going to be hard to do so, with the whole Harmony Gold controversy and whatnot. But yeah,
I
hey,
really,
maybe if my word of mouth got through, maybe you guys would give it a chance.
I really don't think there's any real controversy about Harmony Gold. The only thing about Harmony Gold is they've been kind of dragging their feet as of late, trying to get more Robotech out. But when it comes to recommendations, I really have to give this series my highest recommendation. All I ask is that for anyone who wants to watch it is to remember that back in the '80s, this was a fairly common practice for anime that came into the states.
It was a
That they
gateway to anime, wasn't it? It was one. It was some of people's gateway, wasn't it?
For Robotech, let me see, it came out in '85. It was one of the first well-known anime to be released in the States. I think Tranzor Z had it precluded by a couple of years, even though Tranzor Z is based off an anime that came out in the '70s. But the Robotech is really what kicked off the big transformable robot craze.
Hmm.
That's what one of the starting points, and not only that, for a lot of people like me who were born in the '70s, grew up in the '80s, it was one of your it was one of our first exposures to Japanese animation. I mean, you had other things that were released at the time, or at least maybe a little bit before or a little bit later. Robotech was kind of in the center of that, and so this is the reason why how a lot of us became otaku. We we know and remember anime that we watched as kids back in the '80s, and probably never outgrew our love for the format.
My earliest memory of Robotech was when the Battlecry video game came out in 2002, but that's another story for another day. I didn't even know it aired on Toonami until you brought it up.
Yeah, they aired the Macross and Southern Cross series for some reason. That I remember Kevin McKeever, he was one of the heads of Harmony Gold at the time. The MechaCon had explained it. I can't remember why they never, because I asked him straight up, why was the Infant Saga never aired on Toonami when both the Macross and Southern Cross was. He told me why, and I cannot remember why. Um, But that would kind of upset me because that was the series I was really wanting to see.
Yeah.
Because I didn't recall even watching that when I was a kid. Because Robotech aired very early, and this was at a time where animated shows were syndicated and they could be yanked, at a moment's notice. So I only saw some Robotech, but not the whole series. And so I wanted to see the Southern Cross series because I learned a lot about it. And this was when the internet was starting to become really popular, and they had a lot of fan pages of Robotech popping up. So I learned about as much as possible about the show, kind of jump starting my memory. But then the series I wanted to see, they showed like the next time on Robotech and showing the opening thing for the next for the third series, but then it went right back to the beginning of the Macross series, and that really upset me.
Yeah, I don't know how you felt. They kind of did the same thing with Loop on the Third. They had a preview for an upcoming episode, and for some reason, they started Adult Swim only like, God, they only aired like a small portion of that series.
Oh yeah, that series was extremely long running. I don't know why they didn't
I
air
don't
the.
even know why. I think Lupin is also a series that you can pull non-anime fans into. It's not that hard, but anyways, uh, yeah, like
Especially they gave it. They did sort of like their own thing with the dub, and it ended up being really good.
uh, if you're not picky like me, I would recommend Robotech a pretty high level, especially if you love space opera stuff like I do. Somebody who wants it to make a comeback. Don't fuck up episode 7. Uh, and that's
Yeah, if you're an anime purist, quote unquote, you're probably gonna want to stay as far away from Robotech as possible. But if you're somebody who's an anime who likes anime because it's anime, then you're probably really gonna like Robotech.
well, that's all I got to say. I got nothing else to close it. So this is Dark Screen 217 signing out.
And this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Stay lucky and stay blessed.
And we're probably going to talk more about Robotech in later videos. But I want to talk about the quote unquote future Robotech, but I want to wait until after my convention going trip because that has something to do with it. So take care, everybody.
Take care.